Today in the episode, Viktor Orbán of Hungary has turned into panicking mode on the edge of losing his chair. He fires lawsuits against EU spending big in an attempt to buy loyalty. Peace talks between the USA, Ukraine, and Russia. What are they talking about? And is really India ready, finally, to stop buying Russian oil? Communities are freezing, not only in Ukraine. In Russia, who started the war, cannot afford anything but the war. The winter takes the toll anyway. Russia, cities in Russia plunged into communal hell in the midst of fierce frosts. Turning extreme emergency mode seems to be a last hope for current Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, as he is looking to reverse an opposition poll lead with anything he can. And as a morbid populist, he acts like one, buying votes at all costs. A rollout of pre-election spending is onwards, much of which may reach voters in just 2 months from a pivotal parliamentary ballot.
February is the month when it's worth waiting for the postman or for the bank transfers. Viktor Orbán, Prime Minister of Hungary, on Facebook.
Orbán is pushing all the buttons on his populist agenda. He has announced an 11% minimum wage increase, a 13th-month pension, and the first installment of a 14th-month benefit for retirees, a key voting bloc that polls show still supports his ruling party. And obviously they will anyway, no matter if the rest of the country would have to fall into more and more Russian gas and oil dependency, just so for Viktor Orbán to keep his chair. The government also doubled family tax benefits and expanded lifetime personal income tax exemptions for mothers. Those under 40 years with 2 children will get their salaries without a personal income tax deduction for the first time in February. Orbán has a good reason to lean that heavily on fiscal stimulus to shore up support, with polls showing Péter Magyar's opposition TISA party is winning in a double digit amongst decided voters in several polls. Péter Magyar, a former Orbán regime insider, has capitalized heavily on a cost of living crisis, economic mismanagement, and corruption of the said regime to become the favorite in the April 12th election. Viktor Orbán is bad for the Hungarian economy, says the Hungarian economy, as it expanded just an annual 0.4% in the whole of last year and has barely grown in the past 4 years. That is obviously Orbán's fault, and same obviously his favorite retirees are risking to be deprived of their pensions completely and very soon. Even so, they reject grasping the grim reality while waiting for Orbán's promised postman or a bank transfer. Still, no matter what he does, how much he spends, and how more cheap Russian oil-oriented he becomes in an attempt to fake patriotism and fiscal clarity, Viktor Orbán himself risks becoming a political retiree.
Orbán's gravest challenges have been the affordability crisis, low growth, and the inflation shock in the past years. Even if the fresh measures help somewhat, it could be too little, too late. Andras Bironagi, Director of Policy Solutions, a Budapest-based think tank.
So Orbán is spending big, and Orbán sows Europe for not letting him trade cheap Russian oil for Hungary's independence. But that is nothing new. Orbán files a law case against the EU every time his monarchy is endangered. He did that in 2025 over frozen Russian money. And he also does not like the EU neglecting his veto power, which he has heavily abused. Fair enough. Some of the world-leading experts suggest a solution to the problem.
The fact that one country, Viktor Orbán in Hungary, can just veto any decision, hold up the alliance, sabotage from within. Obviously, they have conflicts of interest and they are accepting money from the Russians. Same with Fico in Slovakia. We need a better control system for members when they go rogue, when they are corrupted. They should be punished or expelled. If you don't support what 95% of the alliance wants to do, then you can just leave. You don't have to be part of it, Hungary. You don't have to be part of it, Slovakia.
As the political climate worsens for him, Orbán does it again, fires lawsuits, and spends Hungarian money as much as 2% of GDP. It looks like panicking mode, really. And maybe he also has a good reason for that. So far, there's little evidence that all his great big handouts and law cases against the EU managed to shift the all-country's anti-Orbán political mood in any way. A Publicist poll published on Monday showed Péter Magyar TISA winning Orbán's Fidesz 48% to 40% amongst decided voters, the same as it was a month ago. Maybe we will see more this month. Something tells me we will, and we surely keep you posted. A bilateral agreements draft on security guarantees for Ukraine with the United States is finalized. Kyiv now looks forward to further substantive work on agreements regarding recovery and economic development. This was stated by President Volodymyr Zelensky following a meeting with the Ukrainian delegation ahead of a new round of trilateral talks with the US and Russia in Abu Dhabi. These talks are scheduled for February 4th and 5th. The President has approved the framework for the dialogue and defined the tasks for the team.
Наша команда продовжує працювати.
Our team continues working with the American side so that real decisions for the sake of peace can be scaled up. Today, there was a meeting with our delegation. The guys are already en route. The meetings will take place on Wednesday and Thursday, and not only in a trilateral format, but we will also have our own bilateral format with the United States. It is important that during this time, the United States also decisively supports dialogue, all available opportunities for dialogue, and works with the Russian side accordingly so that Russian strikes and Russian terror do not derail what can be achieved.
Donald Trump announced another deal. This time it is the deal with India on Russian oil, which, as he expects, will help end the war against Ukraine. Trump said he discussed this with Narendra Modi. Meanwhile, the Indian Prime Minister has not confirmed the refusal of Russian oil yet. As of December last year, there was a trend of declining oil supplies from Russia to India. Under U.S. sanctions and pressure from Washington, Indian refineries are adjusting their oil purchasing strategies. In particular, India plans to buy more oil from Middle Eastern countries and the U.S. itself. Oil purchases from Latin American countries, primarily Venezuela, are also under consideration.
He agreed to stop buying Russian oil and to buy much more from the United States and potentially Venezuela. This will help end the war in Ukraine, which is taking place right now with thousands of people dying each and every week. Donald Trump, President of the United States, on Truth Social.
U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that good news is expected in the peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. He publicly expressed optimism on the matter, noting that the talks are progressing and could yield positive results very soon. Trump also shared that, at his request, Putin has agreed to a temporary halt of strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure during the severe cold. And just over last night, Russia attacked Ukraine. Ukraine has faced another massive combined assault, with energy infrastructure targeted. Russian forces struck using drones, along with cruise and ballistic missiles. The attack included the use of Zircon anti-ship missiles. The majority of the airborne weapons were directed at Kyiv and the surrounding region. Fires have been reported, and several residential buildings, a gas station, were damaged. The Dnipro, Kharkiv, Vinnytsia, and Zaporizhia regions also came under fire during the overnight strikes. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who is visiting Kyiv at this moment, said massive strikes just again and again demonstrate the obvious. Russia is not committed to peace in any way. Critical accidents in housing and communal services in Russia during January were recorded in every seventh region of the country. While Putin is spending all budget money on the war against Ukraine, houses and buildings in Russia are literally collapsing. More in our story for you.
People are freezing. The administration is doing nothing.
In Omsk, residents blocked a road due to lack of heating in their homes. Residents of the Serebryany Bereg micro-district complain about cold radiators, while city authorities ignore their appeals. Heating problems are recorded in most districts of Omsk, and this is just one example of the utility collapse in Russia. Since the beginning of January 2026, the aggressor country has faced a massive wave of emergencies in the housing and utilities sector, reports the publication Votak. In different regions, heat pipelines, water mains, and power lines are failing almost simultaneously, leaving thousands of people without heating, water, and electricity in the midst of severe frosts, and eliminating such emergencies is expensive and extremely difficult.
Such passes are hard to traverse even for tracked vehicles.
According to media calculations, in the first 8 days of the year alone, Russia recorded at least 206 utility incidents, with up to 26 emergencies per day on some days. In January, major failures were recorded in at least 12 settlements, including million-plus cities Omsk and Samara. The reason is outdated infrastructure. More than 80% of distribution networks are worn out, and their renewal is hampered by sanctions. Blackouts have not spared Russia either.
The second wave of massive blackout in Murmansk due to a power line failure. No electricity or heating in residential buildings in at least 2 districts of the city. Part of shops, hospitals, and schools are not working. Internet is also down. Currently, hundreds of residential buildings are without power and heat, mainly in the central and western parts of the city plus suburbs. At least 5 hospitals are not operating. People are being sent to those where there is electricity. Some grocery stores are closed, from media publications.
Compared to January of last year, 2025, the number of confirmed cases of heating and electricity outages during frosts has more than doubled, and water outages by 1.5 times. The leader region in the number of utility emergencies turned out to be Belgorod region, 143 incidents during the winter.
The wear and tear of housing and utilities networks in Russia varies by region from 40% to 80%, previously estimated by Minister of Construction Irek Fayzulin. At the same time, only 2% of infrastructure is renewed annually, although to merely stop the deterioration, twice as much is needed, said member of the State Duma Committee on Construction and Housing and Utilities, Alexander Yakubovsky. Despite the aging networks and mass emergencies, the government has budgeted a gradual reduction of housing and utilities expenditures in the 3-year budget, from a publication by the Moscow Times.
But the Kremlin has no plans to invest in repairing worn-out communications. According to Bloomberg, the Russian government is looking for an additional 1.2 trillion rubles, about $7 billion, to keep the budget deficit within planned limits. The situation is complicated by falling revenues from energy exports and sanctions. Even significant price concessions to the few remaining buyers of Russian oil and gas cannot turn the situation around.
Here, even the insane discount that Russians give on the Urals grade to Indian refineries does not help. If we look at the data for January, these volumes are the lowest in the last year and a half. We see that India is somehow reducing its purchases of Russian oil.
Therefore, the Kremlin is intensively pumping money out of the population. The rise in prices and tariffs is a deliberate attempt by Russian authorities to fill the state budget, stated Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service.
The volume of commodity mass is shrinking because instead of producing civilian goods, engaging in agriculture, growing cucumbers, tomatoes, potatoes, grains, processing them, huge resources, tens of trillions of rubles are thrown into the production of killing tools, tanks, cannons, grenade launchers.
In Russia, not only consumer goods and transportation are rapidly becoming more expensive, but also utility services. Falling real incomes, debts, and rising prices have become the main reasons for a record wave of bankruptcies. In 2025, court bankruptcies of individuals grew by 1/3 and reached almost 570,000 cases. At the same time, more than 97% of cases are initiated by the debtors themselves, who admit they cannot repay their debts. Reported by Victoria Chistyukina, UATV News.
That wraps up today's News Digest. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep these updates coming.